Our story begins in the winter of 1898 in the Italian region of Emilia-Romagna. In the city of Modena, a heavy snowstorm fell, so deep and so isolating that the birth of a child, Enzo Anselmo Ferrari, could not be officially registered at the local office until 2 days after he arrived. He was born into a world of metal. His family home was also his father's workshop. Alfredo Ferrari, his father, was a blacksmith, a man who ran a foundry, building metal parts for the Italian railways. From his first moments, Enzo's world was filled with the sound of the hammer on the anvil, the hiss of steam, and the sharp smell of hot oil. His father, Alfredo, was a practical man. He wanted his 2 sons, Enzo and his older brother, Alfredo Jr., nicknamed Dino, to become engineers, to take over the family business. But Enzo was not a scholar. He was quiet, stubborn, and watchful. The classroom bored him. His gaze and his dreams always drifted past the windows to the dusty roads where the first, loud, and fantastic automobiles were beginning to appear. His destiny was sealed at the age of 10. In 1908, his father took both boys to Bologna to watch a motor race. For the first time, young Enzo saw the giants of the age, men like Vincenzo Lancia, wrestling their massive machines down the road. It was not just the sight, it was the sound, the violent explosion of the engines, the cheers of the crowd, the sense of pure, unbridled speed. It was an intoxication. His older brother, Alfredo Jr., died in the war, not from a bullet, but from a rampant influenza sweeping the military camps. Just months later, his father, Alfredo, overcome with grief and his own illness, died of pneumonia. In a single stroke, at the age of 18, Enzo had lost the 2 most important men in his life. He was left with his mother, Adalgisa. Soon, Enzo himself was conscripted. He was not sent to the front lines. He was assigned to the 3rd Alpine Artillery Regiment. His job was shoeing mules in the freezing mountains. The work was grueling, and then the same plague that took his brother came for him. Enzo contracted the Spanish flu. He was so ill that he was given the last rites. The doctors had given up on him, but Enzo Ferrari refused to die. That stubborn will, the one that defined his childhood, would not yield. He survived. He was given an honorable discharge from the army, but he was broken in body and spirit. He returned to Modena in 1918. He found nothing. The family business had collapsed. He was uneducated, penniless, and haunted by grief. All he had left was that one lingering dream from the race in Bologna. With a letter of recommendation from his army colonel, he traveled to Turin, the heart of the Italian auto industry. His target? Fiat, the largest car company in the country. He presented himself at the factory gates, asking for a job, any job. The answer was cold and swift.
A Fiat engineer looked him up and down and dismissed him. Fiat has no work for a veteran, he was told.
The rejection was absolute. It was a humiliation Enzo Ferrari would never forget. He vowed that one day he would make Fiat regret it. That rejection planted a seed, a burning desire not just to succeed, but to defeat them. He found work in Milan at a small company called CMN. His job was test driving the chassis of old trucks that were being converted into small cars. It was rough work, but he was driving. In 1919, he entered his first race, the Parma Poggio di Bercetto. He finished fourth. His talent was not in raw, natural speed. It was in his mechanical sympathy. He understood the machine. He knew how to nurse it to the finish line. His abilities were noticed. In 1920, the call came. He was hired by Alfa Romeo. In just 2 years, he had gone from being rejected by Fiat to being a works driver for the most prestigious racing brand in Italy. He raced for them throughout the 1920s. In 1923, he won his first major race, and at that race, he met the parents of a fallen Italian World War I flying ace, Count Francesco Baracca. Baracca was a national hero, and on the side of his plane, he painted a symbol for good luck, a black, prancing horse. The hero's mother, the Countess Paulina, spoke to Enzo after his victory. "Ferrari," she said, "put my son's prancing horse on your car. It will bring you luck." Enzo Ferrari, the boy who dreamed of cars, the soldier who almost died, the veteran rejected by Fiat, was now the Commendatore. But driving for Alfa Romeo was not enough. Winning in someone else's car was not enough. He didn't just want to win races, he wanted to be the architect of the victory. His time as a driver was coming to an end. His true legend was about to begin. The year is 1929. The global financial world is about to collapse. But in Italy, the obsession with motor racing is untouched. Enzo Ferrari is 31 years old. His career as a full-time driver is behind him, especially after the birth of his first and only legitimate son, Alfredo, known as Dino. The risk of the track is no longer his alone to take. But he cannot walk away. The sound of the engine is the only sound that makes sense to him. On November 16, 1929, in the city of Modena, Enzo Ferrari founded Società Anonima Scuderia Ferrari, the Scuderia, the stable. His partners were wealthy textile heirs and amateur racers who loved the sport, but lacked the time or the technical skill to run their own cars. Enzo's idea was revolutionary. He would create a professional, full-service racing team for these gentleman drivers. He would provide everything. The cars, which would be exclusively Alfa Romeos. The mechanics, hand-picked by him. And the logistical support to get them to every major race in Europe.
In effect, Scuderia Ferrari became the unofficial and then the official racing department of Alfa Romeo. And now, his new team needed an emblem. He remembered the promise he made to the mother of the fallen war hero Francesco Baracca. Enzo took the black prancing horse and set it against a bright yellow shield, the official color of his hometown, Modena. At the top, he added the 3 colors of the Italian flag. The Cavallina Rampante had found its home. The team's headquarters was in Modena, not Milan with Alfa Romeo. This was Enzo's territory. The garage became a temple of speed, and Enzo was its high priest. Nuvolari, known as the Flying Mantuan, was Enzo's polar opposite. Where Enzo was cold, calculating, and political, Nuvolari was pure fire, instinct, and passion. He drove with a ferocity that terrified other drivers. Their relationship was famously stormy. Nuvolari broke cars that Enzo had prepared with perfectionist care. Enzo tried to control a man who was, by his very nature, uncontrollable. But together, they were a force of nature. In 1932, the Scuderia had become so successful that Alfa Romeo, feeling the financial pinch of the Great Depression, officially withdrew from racing. They handed their entire racing operation, cars, engines, and all, over to Enzo Ferrari. The Commendatore was now the manager of the most powerful racing team in the world. His cars wore the Alfa badge, but they were prepared, run, and willed to victory by the Scuderia in Modena. This era was dominated by impossibly dangerous road races like the Targa Florio and the Mille Miglia, and Ferrari's team won them all. But a new, dark, and powerful threat was emerging from the north. In Germany, the Nazi regime had decided to use motor racing as a tool of propaganda. They poured limitless state funding into 2 teams, Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union. They created the Silver Arrows. These cars were technological marvels. They were brutally powerful, aerodynamic, and years ahead of anything the Italians could field. Suddenly, Enzo's elegant Alfas looked old and slow. The greatest showdown of this era came on July 28, 1935, the German Grand Prix, on the world's most dangerous track, the Nürburgring. A crowd of over 200,000 and the entire Nazi high command gathered to watch an assured German victory. 9 silver arrows were on the grid. Against them was Tazio Nuvolari in an aging Alfa Romeo P3. The car was so outdated that the German press and drivers openly laughed at it. The race began. Nuvolari, in the underpowered car, drove with a superhuman rage. On the wet, terrifying track, he pushed the old Alfa beyond all logical limits. He hunted the silver arrows, one by one. On the final lap, he was right behind the lead Mercedes, driven by the German aristocrat Manfred von Brauchitsch. The Mercedes was faster, but von Brauchitsch had destroyed his tires trying to stay ahead of the phantom Italian. Then, the Mercedes tire exploded. Tazio Nuvolari, in the red Alfa Romeo from Enzo Ferrari's Scuderia, crossed the finish line first. The Nürburgring fell into a dead, stunned silence. The German organizers were so unprepared for this outcome that they didn't even have a recording of the Italian national anthem. They had to frantically search Nuvolari's own van to find a scratched record of the Marcia Reale. It was the impossible victory, and it was Enzo Ferrari's greatest triumph as a team manager. But this success was also the beginning of the end. Alfa Romeo, seeing the glory Ferrari had earned, became jealous. They wanted the control back. In 1938, they made their move. They dissolved their contract with the Scuderia and created a new, in-house racing department called Alfa Corse. They offered Enzo the job of team manager. He was forced to accept. He had to close his beloved Scuderia in Modena and move to Milan to work as a salaried employee. As part of his severance agreement, he was forced to sign a non-compete clause. It forbade him for 4 years from using the name Ferrari in connection with racing or building cars. Enzo was 41. He had built the greatest racing team on earth, only to have it taken away. And now he couldn't even use his own name. He returned to Modena, to the empty garages of his old Scuderia. Just as he did, German tanks were crossing the border into Poland. The world was about to be plunged into the darkness of World War II. And Enzo Ferrari, once again, had to start from nothing. Enzo returned to Modena and entered a legal limbo. The ban on his name was a deep wound to his pride. But his practical mind took over. If he could not be Scuderia Ferrari, he would be something else. In the old Scuderia headquarters, he founded a new company. The name was deliberately anonymous, purely functional. Auto Avio Construzioni. Auto and Aviation Construction. Officially, the AAC did not build racing cars. It was a machine shop, a small factory that built high-precision grinders and other tool parts, many of which were needed for the Italian war effort. The man who lived for the shriek of a racing engine was now manufacturing parts for military aircraft. It was a necessary compromise. It kept his doors open. It kept his core group of trusted mechanics employed. And it provided a cover. Because the blood of a racer runs thick. In 1940, just before Italy was fully consumed by the war, one last great race was announced, the Mille Miglia. 2 wealthy young clients approached Enzo. They knew who he was. They knew what he could really do, regardless of the name on the building. They asked him to build them a car. Enzo could not resist. He could not call it a Ferrari, but he could build it.
Working at a feverish pace, he and his team took the only chassis they could afford, a simple Fiat. But that was just the starting point. In a flash of mechanical genius, Enzo designed his own engine. He essentially took two small Fiat engines and surgically combined them into a single straight 8-cylinder engine. The car was called the Auto Avio Costruzione 815. 8 cylinders, 1.5 liters.
It was a failure. But for Enzo, it was a glorious failure. It taught him the most important lesson of his life. If you want to win, you cannot rely on anyone else's parts. You must build everything, every gear, every chassis, every piston. From that day forward, he vowed he would. Shortly after the race, Mussolini declared war. All motor racing ceased.
The war intensified. Enzo's factory in Modena, producing military parts, was now a target for Allied bombers. In 1943, the factory was hit. Enzo made the decision that would define his company's future. He had to move. He relocated his entire operation 17 kilometers south of Modena to a small, quiet farming village called Maranello. It was a tiny town surrounded by fields, far from the strategic targets of the industrial cities. He bought a plot of land and built a new factory. This was not just a garage. It was a serious industrial plant. For the next 2 years, from 1943 to 1945, while Italy was torn apart by occupation and civil war, Enzo's factory in Maranello worked tirelessly. They were not building cars. They were building high-precision hydraulic grinding machines, and they were the best in Italy. But this was only the facade. This was the means to an end. Every lira of profit from those machine tools was secretly funneled into a different project. At night, when the main production stopped, Enzo would huddle with his most trusted engineers. One of them was a brilliant mind he had known from Alfa Romeo, Gioacchino Colombo. While the factory floor buzzed with the sound of industrial manufacturing, Enzo and Colombo were in a back room, planning the car that would be built the very moment the war ended. Enzo gave Colombo his directive. The car that would bear his name would not be an 8-cylinder like the 815. It would not be a 6-cylinder like his old Alphas. It would be something more complex, more noble, more powerful. It would be a V12. At the time, this was a radical, almost insane idea. V12 engines were for massive, heavy luxury cars like Packards or Rolls-Royces. To put a tiny, high-strung V12 into a lightweight racing car was considered impossibly difficult. Enzo did not care. The V12 had the power, it had the prestige, and above all, it had the sound. The war did not spare Maranello completely. The factory was bombed twice, and twice Enzo and his men rebuilt it from the rubble, often with their bare hands.
Then, in April of 1945, the war in Italy was over. The country was in ruins. But in Maranello, a factory was standing. A team was assembled. The blueprints for a 1.5-liter V12 engine were complete. And the 4-year ban, the legal shackle from Alfa Romeo, had just expired. Enzo Ferrari was 47 years old. He had survived. He was solvent. And he was, finally, free to put his own name on a car.
The year is 1946. Auto Avio Costruzioni is dissolved. In its place, Ferrari is born. The first thing Enzo did was not to design a car. It was to build the engine. For Enzo Ferrari, the engine was not part of the car. The engine was the car. The chassis, he famously said, is only there to hold the engine. He called upon Gioacchino Colombo, the task to build a V12 engine that was, impossibly, only 1.5 liters in displacement. It was madness. It was a jeweler's engine, a piece of high-strung clockwork designed to explode with power. For months, the only sound in Maranello was the precise shaping of this new metallic heart. Enzo was obsessed. He watched over every measurement, every casting. Finally, in late 1946, the first V12 was assembled and mounted on a test bench. The mechanics gathered, holding their breath. Enzo gave the order. The engine sparked to life. The sound was not a roar. It was a high-pitched, musical, and furious scream. It was the sound Enzo had been waiting for his entire life. Enzo did not care. The V12 had the power. It had the prestige. And above all, it had the sound. The war did not spare Maranello completely. The factory was bombed twice, and twice Enzo and his men rebuilt it from the rubble, often with their bare hands. Then, in April of 1945, the war in Italy was over. The country was in ruins. But in Maranello, a factory was standing. A team was assembled. The blueprints for a 1.5-liter V12 engine were complete. Now it needed a body. The car was named the 125S. The name, like all Ferraris to follow, was a simple, cold logic. 125 was the displacement in cubic centimeters of a single cylinder. Multiply 125 by 12, you get 1,500, 1.5 liters. The chassis was a simple steel tube frame. The body, hammered by hand, was a barchetta, a little boat. It was not beautiful. It was functional. And it was painted Rosso Corsa, the racing red assigned by regulation to all Italian race cars. The team worked day and night. The debut race was set, May 11th, 1947, at the circuit in Piacenza. The driver chosen was Franco Cortese, a solid, reliable veteran who wouldn't break the new car. On race day, The Cavallino Rampante was on the hood for the first time. The flag dropped. Cortese took the lead. The sound of the tiny V12 was unlike anything else on the track. The car was a revelation. It was leading. Enzo watched from the pits, his stopwatch in hand, his face a mask of tension. He was just 3 laps from the finish, the first race, the first victory. And then the car sputtered. It coasted to a stop, trailing smoke. The fuel pump had failed. Cortese was devastated. Back in Maranello, Enzo was furious. But to the newspapers, in a moment of public relations genius, he described the event not as a failure. He called it a glorious failure. The car proved it was the fastest, he argued. Reliability is much easier to fix than slowness. He was right. 2 weeks later, on May 25, 1947, the team was in Rome for the Rome Grand Prix, a dangerous, winding street circuit. Cortese drove again. The car, now tuned and fixed, was not just fast, it was reliable. After 40 grueling laps, the Ferrari 125S crossed the finish line first. The first car to bear the name Ferrari with an engine built in his factory had won. When the news was telephoned to Enzo in his Maranello office, he did not celebrate. He did not open champagne. Legend says he simply put down the phone, took a sip of water, and began planning for the next race. The victory was already in the past. But that victory brought a cold, hard, new reality. Racing was expensive, unbelievably expensive. The win in Rome had cost the company almost all of its capital. To keep racing, Enzo needed money. Wealthy aristocrats and playboys, mesmerized by the sound and speed of his V12, had begun to ask, could he build a car for them? Not a raw race car, but a fast, beautiful car for the road? Enzo hated the idea. To him, road cars were a distraction. They were heavy, compromised, and built for amateurs. But they were necessary. He made the decision that would define his company forever. He would build and sell road cars, but he would do it for only one reason: to use the money from those clients to fund his one true passion, his only obsession, the Scuderia. The race car builder was forced, reluctantly, to become a manufacturer of the most exotic luxury cars in the world. Enzo Ferrari treated his road car customers with a legendary disdain. He saw them as playboys, industrialists, amateurs, men who, in his opinion, did not know how to truly drive the thoroughbred machines he was selling them. When Ferruccio Lamborghini, a wealthy tractor manufacturer, came to Maranello to personally complain about the weak clutch in his Ferrari, Enzo refused to see him. He famously told an aide to tell the tractor man to go back to his tractors. That single insult would, years later, give birth to one of his greatest rivals. But Enzo did not care. The money was now flowing.
and every lira was funneled directly back into his true love, the Scuderia. The 1950s became the decade of Ferrari's absolute dominance. With the road cars funding the operation, he could afford to fight on every front. In 1950, the inaugural Formula One World Championship was held. At first, Ferrari struggled against his old employer, Alfa Romeo. But in 1951, at the British Grand Prix, the Ferrari car, driven by José Froilán González, finally beat the Alfas. When Enzo heard the news, he famously said, "I feel as though I have killed my mother." It was a moment of triumph mixed with a strange, lingering guilt. The guilt passed. He hired Alberto Ascari, the son of his old racing friend, and together they won the World Championship in 1952 and again in 1953. His cars won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. They won the Targa Florio, and they dominated the race he loved most of all, the Mille Miglia, the 1,000-mile public road race across Italy. He was now the Commendator, the Drake. He was the agitator of men. His factory in Maranello was the center of the racing universe, and his management style was one of calculated psychological cruelty. And the price for this method was paid in blood. In 1955, his reigning champion, Alberto Ascari, was killed in a brutal crash while testing a Ferrari sports car at Monza. The death shook Enzo, but it did not stop the machine. Drivers, he felt, were replaceable. The car was not. But as tragedy chipped away at his racing family, a far deeper, more personal catastrophe was unfolding in his own home. His son, Alfredo, known as Dino. Dino was the one person Enzo Ferrari seemed to love unconditionally. He was a bright, gentle, talented engineer. Enzo was grooming him to one day take over the entire empire. But Dino was tragically ill. He had been diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. As the Scuderia was conquering the world, Enzo was spending every spare moment at his son's bedside, watching helplessly as Dino's health deteriorated. In his final months, confined to his bed, Dino worked on a design for a new, smaller engine, a V6. Enzo would sit with him for hours, taking technical notes as his son, his voice growing weaker, dictated the specifications. On June 30th, 1956, Alfredo Dino Ferrari died. He was 24 years old. Enzo Ferrari's world collapsed. The man who had built a public image of iron and steel broke. He became a recluse. He was harder, more bitter, more isolated. He began to wear his famous dark sunglasses almost all the time to hide his eyes, which were often red from weeping. He visited Dino's grave every single morning before work and every evening before returning home. His son's death hardened his heart to the rest of the world. If he was ruthless before, he was now glacial. And the greatest tragedy was yet to come. May 12th,
1957. The Mille Miglia, Enzo's favorite race. His top driver, the Spanish aristocrat Alfonso de Portago, was worried. He had complained of a problem with the steering or a tire. During a pit stop, the mechanics, under pressure to be fast, did not change the tire. Enzo himself was there. He urged his driver to hurry. Near the end of the 1,000-mile race, on a long, straight road near the village of Guidizzolo, the Ferrari 337S was traveling at over 150 miles per hour. The front tire exploded. The car became uncontrollable. It launched into the air, slicing through the thick crowd that lined the road. The scene was medieval. Alfonso de Portago was killed. His co-driver, Edmund Nelson, was killed, and 9 spectators were killed with them. 5 of the dead were children. Italy, a nation that adored him, was horrified. The press turned on him. The Vatican officially denounced him, with one newspaper calling him Saturn, devouring his own children. He was charged by the Italian government with manslaughter. The Mille Miglia was banned forever. Enzo retreated behind the walls of Maranello. In the span of 1 year, he had lost his son, and now his name was synonymous with death. In the wake of Dino's death, Enzo's grief manifested as rage. His management became more tyrannical, more unpredictable. That pressure was building, and in 1961, the volcano finally erupted. It is known as the Palace Revolt. After a dispute involving Enzo's wife, Laura, 8 of Ferrari's most senior managers and engineers, including his chief designer, Carlo Chitti, and his brilliant development lead, Giotto Bizzarini, walked out. They quit en masse. It was an apocalypse. The entire engineering heart of the company was gone. The press predicted the end. Ferrari was finished. Enzo's reaction was one of pure, cold disdain. One is never happy to be rid of a man one wants to get rid of, he said bitterly. To replace the most experienced engineering team in the world, Enzo did the unthinkable. He promoted a young, 26-year-old engineer named Mauro Forghieri. It was a gamble, but it was a masterstroke. Forghieri was brilliant, loyal, and would define Ferrari's engineering for decades. Together, they would need that brilliance, because across the Atlantic, a new, far larger enemy was watching. Despite its fame, Ferrari was, as always, leading money. Enzo's racing obsession was a black hole for cash. Reluctantly, he agreed to negotiate. For months, Ford executives swarmed Maranello, auditing the books. A deal was struck. Ford would buy the company for millions. The day of the signing arrived. Enzo sat at his desk. He read the contract, and he stopped. There was a clause, a single line
stating that any racing budget over a certain amount would require approval from managers in Detroit. Enzo looked up from the paper. He looked at the executives, and in a quiet, firm voice, he told them the deal was off. He then stood up and went to lunch, leaving the Americans speechless at the table. He had humiliated the most powerful man in the auto industry. When Henry Ford II heard the news, his rage was absolute. His orders to his racing division were simple and now legendary. You go to Le Mans. I want to beat Ferrari's ass, and I want to win. The war began. Ford unleashed a budget that Enzo Ferrari could not even comprehend. They built the GT40, a high-tech monster designed for one purpose: to destroy Ferrari at Le Mans. In 1964, Ferrari won. In 1965, Ferrari won again. The Fords were fast, but they were fragile. In 1966, Ford returned, not with a team, but with an army. They brought a fleet of cars, hundreds of mechanics, and the best drivers money could buy. For 24 hours, the red cars and the blue cars fought. But the Ford's brutal power and limitless budget were too much. One by one, the Ferraris broke. At the end of the race, 3 Ford GT40s crossed the finish line in a staged, humiliating 1-2-3 formation. Enzo Ferrari had been beaten. The war with Ford had financially ruined him. He knew he could not continue to fight alone. If the Scuderia was to survive, he needed a partner. But it would not be an American one. It would be an Italian one. In 1969, Enzo met with Gianni Agnelli, the patriarch of Fiat, the very company that had rejected him as a young man. They struck a deal. Fiat would purchase 50% of the Ferrari road car division. This gave the company permanent financial security. But Enzo had one non-negotiable demand. Fiat would have zero control over the racing team. He, Enzo Ferrari, would retain 100% control of the Scuderia. Agnelli agreed. Enzo had pulled his final masterpiece. He had sold the part of his business he cared little about to get eternal funding for the only part he ever loved: racing. The 1970s, funded by Fiat, brought a new golden age. He hired a young, ruthlessly precise Austrian driver named Niki Lauda. Together, they conquered the world, winning championships in 1975 and 1977. This, perhaps, was the final blow. Enzo retreated from the world almost completely. He spent his last years ruling his empire from his home in Modena. He rarely even visited the factory. In 1987, his health failing, he summoned his engineers for one last project. He wanted a car that was the ultimate summary of his life's work. No compromises, no luxury, no electronic aids, just a chassis, an engine, and pure, terrifying speed. Relaxing voice. It was the last car Enzo Ferrari would personally sign off on. On August 14th, 1988, Enzo Anselmo Ferrari died in his bed. He was 90 years old. At his request, his death was not announced to the public for 2 days, just as his birth had been delayed. He left the world as he had entered it on his own schedule. A few weeks later, at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, the dominant McLaren team, which had won every single race that season, suffered a rare mechanical failure. The two red Ferrari cars drove past, finishing first and second. In front of the ecstatic Italian crowd, it felt like a miracle, a final, impossible victory, willed from beyond by the old man himself. Today, Ferrari is more than a car. It is a legend, a religion, a global symbol of wealth, speed, and desire. All of it, built on the stubborn, relentless, and obsessive dream of one man from Modena. And so, the roar of the engines fades to a whisper. The story of Enzo Ferrari, a man forged by speed, by tragedy, and by a relentless obsession, comes to its close. Thank you for joining us on this long journey. I hope this story has been a comfort to you, that the sound of the words and the music has helped you to let go of the day and find your way to a quiet rest. I hope by now you are peaceful, sleeping deeply, or very nearly there. If you've enjoyed this time together in the night, if you enjoyed this journey, I'd like to invite you to subscribe. We will be here again, ready to tell you another story, the next time you need a quiet guide into sleep. Until then, thank you for listening. Good night.